Olivia stood by the bedroom closet, pulling her overnight bag down from the top shelf like she had done a dozen times before. But tonight, something about the way she moved, too practiced, too careful, unsettled Liam. He watched her from the doorway, leaning against the frame, arms folded across his chest as he tried to quiet the unease curling inside him. "I'm going to stay with Mom for a couple of days," Olivia said, her tone casual as she zipped the bag. "She's been having those dizzy spells again, and I don't want her alone if it gets worse. Don't wait up, okay?" She turned to him then, her eyes soft, her lips brushing against his in a goodbye kiss that felt rehearsed. Too quick. Too light. Liam didn't say anything, just nodded, forcing a smile as she walked past him and down the hall. The sound of her heels on the hardwood floor echoed louder than usual, like a countdown to something neither of them dared to name. He watched from the window as her car pulled out of the driveway and disappeared down the street. The taillights blinked red, then vanished around the corner. Silence filled the house, but it wasn't peaceful. It was a silence that buzzed in his ears, heavy with unspoken things. Liam poured himself a drink, something he rarely did on a weeknight. But the scotch burned just enough to quiet the voice in the back of his mind, at least for a moment. He sat down in the dim light of their living room, the untouched glass resting in his hands, and replayed the conversation from earlier that afternoon. Olivia had mentioned the trip like it was nothing, dropped it into conversation over coffee as she adjusted her scarf, eyes flitting from her phone to the window. Her words had been smooth, almost too smooth, and now that she was gone, Liam couldn't help but feel the weight of what she didn't say. It wasn't like Olivia to leave in the middle of the week. Her relationship with her mother was polite, but distant. She hadn't visited in months, not even for her birthday. And yet now she claimed to be rushing over like it was an emergency. Liam hesitated only a moment before grabbing his phone and dialing the number burned into memory. It rang twice before Olivia's mother answered, cheerful and surprised. "Liam. How are you?" He asked, casually, if Olivia had arrived yet. There was a pause, short, but sharp. "She's not here, sweetie. I haven't seen her in weeks. Everything okay?" Liam didn't answer right away. His throat felt tight. "Yeah," he lied. "Everything's fine." But it wasn't. Not even close. Liam stood in the hallway long after hanging up the call with Olivia's mother, the phone still warm in his hand. Her voice, cheerful and unsuspecting, echoed in his mind like an accusation he hadn't yet put into words. She hadn't seen Olivia in weeks. Olivia had lied, so easily, so casually. He walked into the kitchen, placed his phone gently on the counter, and leaned against the edge of the sink, staring out the window into the backyard. The porch light buzzed softly, casting a faint yellow glow over the empty lawn. It was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that soothed. This was a different quiet, one filled with questions that didn't yet have answers. Liam tried to reason with himself. Maybe Olivia had changed her mind at the last minute. Maybe she'd stopped somewhere else, maybe a friend's place, or maybe there really was some kind of misunderstanding. He opened the fridge, not looking for anything in particular, just needing to do something with his hands. The cold air didn't clear his head. He shut the door again and turned away. None of it made sense. Olivia wasn't a spontaneous person. She planned everything, her weekends, her workouts, even their arguments sometimes. And if she had changed her mind, she would have called, texted, left a note. She wouldn't have just vanished into the night. But what unsettled Liam most wasn't the lie itself, it was how easily it had rolled off her tongue. As if it had been practiced. As if she'd told it before. He walked into the living room and sat down on the edge of the couch, resting his elbows on his knees, fingers laced together. The bag. That overnight bag, he remembered now how she'd taken her time packing it. Not frantically, not with the concern of someone tending to a sick mother. She'd folded her clothes carefully, selected what to bring like she was preparing for a comfortable stay. He hadn't noticed it then. He'd been too distracted by her kiss and the gentle way she told him not to wait up. A new thought crept into his mind, uninvited but insistent. What if this wasn't the first time? His gut clenched, not from fear but from clarity. Looking back, there had been small things. Tiny shifts in Olivia's behavior that he'd ignored or dismissed. The way she'd started keeping her phone face down on the table. How she began taking calls in the other room. Her sudden interest in evening yoga classes she never seemed sore from. And then there were the silences, not loud, not obvious, but stretched thin like a wire about to snap. Liam stood up abruptly, the silence in the room pressing in tighter. He went upstairs, his steps slow and deliberate, and stepped into their bedroom. The scent of her perfume lingered, sweet and floral, clinging to the air like a fading ghost. Her side of the bed was perfectly made. Too perfect. As if she hadn't wanted to leave behind any trace of herself. He opened her nightstand drawer, something he'd never done before, not out of mistrust, but out of respect. Inside, everything was meticulously arranged. Lotion, lip balm, a small jewelry box. But something was missing. Her charger. The paperback she usually kept beside the bed. The tiny travel toothbrush she took on weekend trips. He sat down on the bed, staring at the empty space beside him, and tried to steady his breathing. The doubt wasn't just a whisper anymore, it was a roar. Every quiet moment between them over the last few months rushed back with new meaning. Her laughter that didn't reach her eyes. Her lingering glances at her phone. Her sudden excuses to leave the house, always tinged with the kind of urgency that now felt false. Liam got up again and opened the closet. One of her coats was gone, the beige trench she only wore when she wanted to look nice. Her heels were missing too. The red ones. The ones she called her danger shoes. The ones she hadn't worn in over a year, until tonight. A deep unease settled over him. She hadn't gone to her mother's. That much was certain. And now, standing in their bedroom, surrounded by the carefully curated illusion of routine, he realized the truth had been slipping through his fingers for weeks, maybe months. Maybe even longer. Still, he didn't let anger take over. Not yet. He wasn't ready for that. Right now, all he had was the knot in his chest and the cold clarity that told him, this wasn't random. Olivia hadn't made a last-minute change of plans. She had a destination, and it wasn't the one she'd claimed. Liam walked back downstairs, grabbed his keys from the bowl by the door, and paused. He wasn't sure exactly where he was going yet. But something told him that if he followed the trail, he wouldn't have to go far. She'd lied. And now, it was time to find out where the lie ended. The night outside had grown heavier, the sky thick with cloud cover, dimming the city into a kind of blurred gloom that matched Liam's mind. He sat in his car at the end of his driveway for a full minute before starting the engine. His hands rested on the steering wheel, still, calm, too calm. He wasn't sure where he was going, only that his instincts had drawn the map, not logic. The truth was no longer hidden in words, it was in movement, in behavior, in the spaces Olivia thought he would never notice. And tonight, he was done ignoring them. As he pulled out of their neighborhood, he replayed every conversation he'd had with her over the past 2 weeks. There had been hints, subtle but there. Olivia, always thoughtful, had started making small slips, times when she'd forget what lie she'd told last, moments when her emotions didn't align with her words. A couple of days ago, she had mentioned taking a different route to work because of construction. Liam knew the route well, he took it himself, and there hadn't been any roadwork. At the time, he hadn't pressed. But now that inconsistency joined a growing chorus of doubt. Instead of heading toward her mother's house, Liam turned in the opposite direction, toward a neighborhood he hadn't visited in years, one that lay on the other side of the river, tucked behind rows of old brick apartment buildings. It was a quiet, unremarkable place, the kind of area people drifted to when they wanted to disappear into routine. Olivia had once worked a freelance design project for a real estate agent who lived over there. Liam remembered that fact now, vaguely, because she had insisted on keeping that client separate, just a one-time favor, she'd said. His headlights swept across a row of parked cars as he turned onto a side street. And then he saw it. Her car. Olivia's silver SUV sat beneath a flickering street lamp, its familiar scratch on the rear bumper clearly visible. Liam pulled over, cutting the engine, and stared at it for a long time. She had lied, undeniably, irrefutably. She hadn't just fabricated a trip to her mother's, she'd parked her car here, in this unfamiliar pocket of town, and disappeared into someone else's world. Liam remained in the car, breathing slow, steady. He wasn't the kind of man to explode. His power came in silence, in clarity. And right now, everything was becoming painfully clear. Across the street, the second-floor apartment of a modest red-brick complex had a light flicker on. It was just after midnight, and yet someone was still awake. He watched, heart in his throat, as a shadow crossed the window. A man, tall, lean, shirtless, moved past, then disappeared from view. A few seconds later, another shape emerged behind him. Her. Olivia. She walked into the frame with the fluid ease of someone who belonged there. Her hair was up, loosely twisted, and she wore the oversized t-shirt she often stole from Liam's dresser, the one with the faded college logo. Liam didn't blink. He couldn't. He was staring not just at his wife, but at the quiet reality of her betrayal, played out casually in the soft yellow glow of another man's home. There was no confrontation, not yet. Liam wasn't impulsive. He had learned over the years that the worst kind of truth doesn't need to be shouted to be heard. Sometimes, all you have to do is see it, and the sound it makes will echo inside you forever. He leaned back in his seat, his eyes never leaving the apartment window. Olivia laughed at something, a genuine laugh, the kind that lifted her shoulders and tilted her head back slightly. She hadn't laughed like that in weeks, maybe longer. She turned then, her figure silhouetted against the light, and rested her hand on the man's chest. It was an intimate gesture, soft and familiar, and it landed on Liam's chest like a blow. He looked away for the first time, not because he couldn't bear to watch, but because he'd seen enough. The truth wasn't a question anymore, it was a fact. His wife was here, not at her mother's. She was with someone else, in someone else's space, living out a lie she had crafted with such precision that it almost felt rehearsed. But Liam wasn't broken. He wasn't unraveling in the way she probably assumed he would if he ever found out. No, this was something different. A cold understanding, a shift in balance. She had chosen this deception, and she had believed she was clever enough to keep it hidden. That was her mistake. Liam started the car again, engine humming softly beneath his seat. He didn't look back at the window. He didn't need to. The truth was now a weight in his chest, but it was no longer tangled in uncertainty. It was clean, sharp, and utterly unshakable. As he drove away, the city lights blurred past, but his thoughts were crystal clear. He wasn't going to confront her tonight. He wouldn't give her that satisfaction. Let her believe the lies still worked. Let her smile and sleep and feel safe, just for a little longer. She thought she was staying somewhere safe. But she had no idea that everything was about to change. Liam didn't sleep that night. After leaving the apartment complex, he drove aimlessly for an hour, winding through silent neighborhoods and empty roads, his thoughts sharp and alert in the stillness. He didn't feel rage, not the kind that demands slamming doors or shouting matches. What he felt was colder, deeper, and far more dangerous, clarity. When he finally returned home, he moved through the house with mechanical precision. The air smelled faintly of lavender from the diffuser Olivia had left running. He shut it off. Every detail in the house felt curated by her, yet none of it mattered anymore. He wasn't in a home, he was in a museum of make-believe, carefully arranged around a story that had stopped being true long ago. By dawn, Liam had already made up his mind. He wasn't going to scream. He wasn't going to plead. He wouldn't give Olivia the satisfaction of watching him collapse beneath the weight of her betrayal. Instead, he packed. Not in haste, not in panic, but in control. He selected what he needed: clothes, his laptop, a few personal keepsakes that weren't tainted by her touch. He left the photo albums, the vacation souvenirs, the anniversary cards, all of which, in hindsight, felt like props from a play she had long stopped believing in. At exactly 8:12 a.m., Olivia's car pulled into the driveway. Liam didn't rush. He stood in the kitchen, coffee mug in hand, watching through the window as she exited the vehicle. She looked composed, even cheerful. The mask of someone who believed she had gotten away with something. She adjusted her coat in the mirror, took a breath, and walked up to the front door with the slow, casual confidence of someone returning from an innocent trip. The key turned in the lock. The door opened. "Oh, you're up early," she said as she stepped inside. Her voice was light, affectionate, as if the night before had never happened. "Didn't sleep well?" Liam didn't respond immediately. He took a sip of his coffee, letting the silence stretch. Then he turned to face her. "I called your mom," he said, his tone flat but not without weight. "She was surprised to hear you were visiting." The change in Olivia's expression was minute, but unmistakable. A flicker, just one, but it was enough. Her mouth opened, then closed again, before settling into a half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh. I stopped by a friend's place first. Mom wasn't feeling up for company, so I stayed over with Mel instead." "Mel?" Liam asked calmly, setting his mug down. "You mean Melissa, the one who moved to Oregon last year?" Olivia's smile faltered completely this time. Her mouth tightened. "Okay, maybe not Mel. It doesn't matter." "Liam, you're acting weird. What's going on?" He stepped aside slightly, revealing the hallway behind him, and the 2 suitcases he'd packed, now standing by the door. "What's going on," he said, "is that I watched you last night." Her face went pale, blood draining as the meaning behind his words hit. She said nothing, only stared, her eyes searching his face for some kind of softening. There was none. "I saw you," Liam continued, his voice quiet but unwavering. "I saw where you really went. I saw him. I saw you touch him like you used to touch me." "Liam, wait," she began, but he raised a hand, stopping her. "No more stories, Olivia. No more reworking the truth to suit whatever version you think I'm ready to believe. It's over." She swallowed hard, blinking rapidly. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this." "You didn't mean for me to find out," he corrected. "That's what you didn't mean." For a long moment, there was only silence between them, the kind that settles after something irreversible has been said. She stepped forward, her voice softer now. "I never stopped loving you." But Liam didn't flinch. He didn't soften. He'd already said his goodbye the moment he saw her behind that stranger's window. "You thought you were staying somewhere safe," he said quietly, almost more to himself than to her. "You thought the lie was clean enough, hidden well enough, that you could keep living both lives and never pay for either." He walked toward the door, picking up his keys from the console. "There's a note on the table," he said without looking at her. "You'll find it when you're ready to be honest, though I don't think you ever will be. But just in case you're wondering." He paused, hand on the door handle. Then he looked back at her one final time, and said, "There's nowhere left to hide." And with that, he stepped out into the morning light, leaving Olivia alone in the silence of the life she had fractured. The door clicked shut behind Liam with a finality that echoed louder than any argument ever could. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. Everything that needed to be said had been delivered in silence, in truth laid bare. He walked down the steps, the morning light soft against his face, the air crisp with early spring chill. His breath came easier now, not because the pain had gone, but because the weight of pretending had lifted. He didn't have a destination in mind when he left the house. All he knew was that he needed distance, space between himself and the version of life that had become a lie. He drove for nearly an hour before pulling into the gravel parking lot of a lakeside trail they used to visit years ago, back when things between them still felt real. He parked the car, stepped out, and walked toward the edge of the water. The lake was still, undisturbed, its surface reflecting a sky that was just beginning to warm. He stood there, letting the wind press gently against him, his hands in his pockets. For the first time in what felt like years, he was alone without feeling lonely. There was no need to decode words, no second-guessing glances, no performance to maintain. Just himself, and the ache of what had been lost. Back at the house, Olivia sat at the kitchen table with his note in her hands. She had read it 3 times and still didn't understand how he had left without shouting, without slamming doors, without demanding answers. It was a short note, just 2 sentences. You thought you were staying somewhere safe. Now you know there's nowhere left to hide. The words weren't cruel. They were simply true. That's what unsettled her the most. She tried calling him, once, twice, again. Each time it went straight to voicemail. She texted, messages that ranged from apologies to explanations to quiet desperation, each more frantic than the last. Liam didn't respond. He had nothing left to say. The conversation, in all its unspoken tension, was over. And in that silence, Olivia began to realize something she hadn't anticipated. Losing Liam wasn't about losing her marriage, it was about losing her reflection in his eyes, the version of herself she liked best. Meanwhile, Liam checked into a small hotel just outside the city. The room was plain, but clean, quiet, exactly what he needed. He spent the next day reordering the small details of his life. He called his workplace to request time off. He forwarded his mail to a friend's address. He made a list of financial accounts that needed separating. Every action was a step toward reclaiming autonomy, toward starting over not out of anger, but out of necessity. He didn't announce the separation to friends or family right away. The truth, he knew, would spread soon enough. He didn't need the pity or the unsolicited advice. What he needed was time to understand who he was without Olivia, who he had always been beneath the years of compromise, quiet sacrifices, and overlooked red flags. Days passed. Then a week. Olivia eventually stopped calling, her last message a simple, uncertain, "Please talk to me." Liam read it but didn't reply. Her need to explain no longer held any power. She had made her choice long before he caught her in the lie. All he had done was catch up to it. The peace that followed was not without sorrow, but it was honest. And in that honesty, Liam began to heal. Slowly, steadily, and on his own terms. He had once believed that love could survive almost anything. But trust? Trust was different. Once it was broken, it didn't shatter, it dissolved. Quietly, like breath in winter air. Gone before you even realized you needed it to stay.